Hi, I'm Ashley Adamson. If you're a woman, if you're trans, this is something, and you're a trans woman, this is something you may deal with, which is having to show up 100% or feeling the burden of having to show up 100% in a way where you feel comfortable, but it also creates this tension between where you're at and where you feel like you need to show. Now, as a woman, I feel like there are certain expectations on me of how I do my hair, how I dress, how I sound, how I walk, how I look, like what my mannerisms are, what the expectations of me are to just be a woman in a public space. And sometimes those expectations, no one's calling me up and saying these are the expectations. I just feel them from how society exists, how we create the presentation of the woman in movies, in books, in television. And then you layer on this additional layer of being trans, and suddenly it becomes even more difficult because you're now contending with man in a dress syndrome. You're contending with what people's projections are about what trans people are. You're also safety, is being out and being visible a problem? Are you trying to pass, or are you trying to deliberately not pass or be visible? If you're trying to be visible and not pass, you have layers of that too. It's okay, so you're trying to consciously deconstruct the gender norms. Now you need to consciously deconstruct it, or make effort towards deconstructing it, because if you don't, then you're just being a part of the binary. I used to do this as a non-binary person as well. So it's you can't escape it. Even if we're talking about gender norms and perpetuating gender norms, if you're talking about breaking down gender norms and breaking down gender norms, then you also have a project at hand, because now you have to constantly be thinking about how you present, and it becomes a pretty exhausting experience. So yeah, I remember being non-binary, and the amount of work that I had to do to keep it non-binary, because you have to kind of balance this feminine but also a little masculine, and kind of how do I work with my body and how I present, and how these, and with these YouTube videos it's the same thing. Okay, I gotta put on my makeup, and I gotta make sure my hair's good looking, and then I gotta do this, and I gotta sound like that. My voice is allergies in Washington, Seattle, oh my God. I don't even sound great. It's just, maybe if I just speak close to the mic like this, maybe things will be better. If I could just hear myself, maybe it'd just be better. Sometimes I just wish I could just rip out my voice and then just put in a new version and just be great. I just, I installed something new. This idea of surgery just gets taken too far for me as a trans person, because now it's okay, well, if I can change my gender and I can change my face and I can put in boobs, why can't I just have other things installed and just change things out? It's this game Cyberpunk, which I'm starting to play right now, and it's pretty awesome. All the little things that you can do. But doesn't it feel like you have a bit of a burden to show up in the way that you want to show up? Even if you're a man, there's expectations on you. So how do you balance that? How do you find your own sense of comfort in the way that you show up, and in the way that you are, where you feel not only are you not feeling the gaze of others, but you're also not feeling the gaze of yourself? Think about this for a second. I believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe as a defensive mechanism, we, as humans, simulate a other persona or other perspective that has a gaze upon us, which is really our own gaze, simulating another person's gaze that we've created so that we can protect ourselves, and that we can emulate what other people may be thinking, so that we can make better reactions and make better choices on this. For example, if I'm looking in the mirror and I'm looking at my hair, I'm not just looking at my hair, I'm looking at my hair from another person's perspective. Would another person think that my hair looks good? Would another person think that my makeup looks good, my earrings look good, my outfit looks good? I'm not trying to just impress myself in the mirror. I'm trying to impress the persona of myself in the mirror. And if I had a fair persona of myself in the mirror, everything would be fine. But the thing is I don't, because I held myself to very high standards, and I have very high expectations of myself, and I will potentially be a little bit more critical than other people are of how they see me. And you see this in other people too, and maybe you do this to yourself. I see people go, oh, like, sorry, like I forgot to do X, or like my lip is dry, or my room is messy, and it's not that messy. Like, people are more critical of themselves, and they simulate that. Now, why do they do that? It's this protection mechanism, and perhaps if you are more critical of yourself, you could say, well, if I'm maximum critical of this thing and simulating this persona, then, and I can pass that bar, then like I pass everything and that's fine. But is this really healthy? Is this really helpful for you? I have to kind of, like, the further in my transition, I've started to recognize, like, okay, things don't need to be perfect. The more you try to make them perfect, the more tension you create, the more dissatisfaction you have. I could keep doing surgeries for myself, but that's just going to cost more money, and I'm going to get inches rather than feet. Oh my God, every time I talk about length and inches and stuff, I'm just thinking about like dicks. Oh my goodness, Ashley Adamson, what are you doing? But like, where was I even going? I threw myself off. This self-perception that you do to yourself, and you do it to yourself, like in your life, in your successes, like where do you do it? How do you build a healthy relationship with this? Because let's be honest, it's probably never going to go away. It's probably a human It's a human behavior in my theory. I believe it is a human behavior. So like, how do you create a relationship with this external persona that you simulate? And you could even break it down into multiple personas, and it's probably not broken down in your head as multiple personas, which can make it even more difficult, because if you don't break down each of these personas that you use against yourself, then you can just be trying to impress this like big amorphous blob that you have no idea really exists because you haven't articulated it clearly enough. But if you did have a very clear persona, then maybe that might help you also understand how to break it down and turn it into its pieces, and then hopefully deconstruct it in a way that can help you find more self-love and self-care. So like, how do you do that? I think that the way that you approach looking at yourself and looking at all of the self-criticism that you create for yourself as a way to protect yourself might be to allow this voice to exist, but to not let it drive your decisions, and to just say, yo, I heard you, I feel you, but I'm gonna go this way because this is what I want. Or I see that, but I could also just be wrong with that. And as much as, you're looking in the mirror, as much as like you may say that I don't look good, or you don't like the circles under my eyes, or that you see something wrong with my face, I'm going to be okay. No one else is going to notice this, and maybe I'm just hypercritical. This is one of the most interesting science topics that I've seen, which is they did research on selfies and how people rated themselves as less attractive when they saw themselves more recently. But as years progress, they started to see themselves more favorably and more accurate to how other people rated them in terms of their attractiveness. So take this for a second. Imagine that you are biased. This is what they said in this research. They said, the theory is we think you are biased about how you look and you focus on certain aspects of yourself that are not really there in the way that you see them. And so when you get distance, you get time away from this, years, you're going to see yourself more objectively true than how you actually look. And I feel like that's true. Like when I had my surgery, when it was brand new, the way that I looked at myself then versus how I look at myself now, and I look at myself back in time, I see a huge difference. And I also see myself as more attractive, and I go, wow, like I actually looked pretty good. And it's like, hold up, bitch, you look the same now. You still look good, right? You still look good. And like that to me was kind of surprising, is being able to see myself in a way I was like, damn, Ashley, you be looking good. You be looking fine in that dress. You be looking great. And then I'm like, I wish I'd looked like that. And like, Ashley, you still do. So like, there you go. So like the thing that I really want you to kind of take away from this is this. It's think about these levels of expectation that you set upon yourself and this inner critic that you may even layer on top of that kind of make it very hard to get out of certain situations, or to even, you have to exert more personal energy to kind of get through it. And if you had more personal energy to not have to exert through this, it would allow you to do more of what you want to do, whether that's go out and be more social, or for me, it's also my anxiety around making YouTube videos. Like, what can you do to kind of de-escalate? Like, how can you take more of that power away from this critic and more of that power away from the expectations you've set on yourself, so that way you can make it easier for you to move forward and take things in strides, really. That's really the big question. So write me a comment down below. If you'd like to join my channel, I'd love your support. And thank you. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you in another episode soon. Bye.